Birds, people, and the dogs that bring them together. This is episode number 26. My name is Bill, and you're tied to the Woe Post. Before we start, I'd like to thank everyone that listened to last week's episodes with Bob Ferris. But I noticed that while both episodes did great, part 1 was one of my best performing episodes to date. Part 2 only had about half as many listeners. This is a little bit surprising because part 2 was a lot better than part 1, and I think a few of you are missing out. So when you're done with this episode, be sure to go back and listen to episode number 25. And if you're one of the few folks that missed episode 24, then go back and start there. Or maybe just go back to episode number 1 and work your way through all of them. As always, you can contact me through Facebook or Instagram at The Woe Post, through my email, bill@thewoepost.com, or through my website, www.thewoepost.com. And if you'd like to join our Patreon community, head over to patreon.com/thewoepost and become a patron. As one of the 3 original long-haired pointing dogs from Germany, the Large Munsterlander gained official recognition as a separate breed in 1919 when the German Long-Haired Pointer Club chose to no longer recognize the black color variation. The Large Munsterlander is a black and white dog with hair of medium length. In its German homeland and some other countries, this dog has been bred for over a century for hunting and not for the show ring. Hence, coat color is highly variable, ranging from predominantly white to predominantly black. Markings occur as solid black and white patches or ticked or roan regions. The head remains primarily black. The Large Munsterlander is characteristically calm, gentle, and intelligent, and is therefore valued as a family dog as well as a hunting companion. It is well suited for a variety of game, including the tracking of big game. LMs are adept at adjusting their search pattern relative to the cover conditions at hand, performing well outside of gun range in open country and reducing their range in dense cover. Under all circumstances, they remain responsive to and cooperative with the handler. LMs excel as bird finders before and after the shot due to their excellent noses and a purposeful searching style emphasizing thoughtful coverage rather than speed. Many LMs point with intensity from early puppyhood, and many also honor naturally. Given their passion for retrieving over land or water, steadiness needs to be encouraged through training. Large Munsterlander adults stand 23 to 26.5 inches at the shoulder and generally weigh 50 to 70 pounds. Their coats are black and white and can be patched, plated, ticked, or patched and ticked. Today we're talking Large Munsterlanders with Stephanie McNeal, the Large Munsterlander Club of North America Secretary, and Paul Randall, Certified Maine Guide and owner of 2 Large Munsterlanders. Hey, Stephanie and Paul, thanks for being on the show.
Welcome.
Yep. We're glad we're here. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys taking time out of your day, and I know, Paul, you're taking time out of a really long commute to spend some time with us and talk about the Large Munsterlanders up in the North Woods of Maine. And, you know, it seems like in the bird dog world, when we talk about the North Woods, we're talking about northern Wisconsin, the UP of Michigan, maybe northern Minnesota. But North Woods for you guys is a different part of the country.
It is. It's actually truly a legal area as well. I mean, there's no electric utilities are allowed in there. No phone lines. So it's actually defined by law, and in one sense. And then most all of the land is owned by the paper companies, and they have been very generous in allowing public access. So people in Maine or anyone who visits have access to thousands of acres of good bird country.
It's such a cool area too, and like we were talking about before, I spent some summers as I was growing up, you know, in my youth, way up in the tip of northern Maine. So I have an appreciation for just how remote things can be up there. You know, people think about New England and they think of these, you know, quaint little towns with hundreds of years of history, or maybe, you know, might think of Boston or Hartford or something like that. But you have really like the northern 30% or so of Maine that's effectively wilderness and practically untouched.
Yeah, you drive for hours and hours and not see another person or see a building.
Yeah, it's just a really cool place. But, you know, so before we get too far along, can you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves, please?
I'm Stephanie McNeal. I've owned Munsterlanders now for about 21 years with my husband, Greg. And I'm also the secretary for the Large Munsterlander Association of America, LMAA, and the newsletter editor. So I get pretty much involved in a lot of different issues with the LMs, and I get to meet a lot of the LM owners that way. So because we seek as much input from the owners as possible. So I've enjoyed it. And Paul, I'll let you introduce yourself.
My name's Paul Randall. I work for a paper company here in the state of Maine. I'm very close to retirement. I'm relatively new to the Large Munsterlander scene. I got my first Large Munsterlander in 2018. Before that, I was a duck hunter and I had Chesapeake Bay Retrievers. So it's a bit of a difference. I'm also a registered Maine guide. And I intend when I retire to hunt, to guide with my bird dogs. So I love the breed.
Do you have the Maine guide patch on your on a wool jacket that you wear when you're out hunting?
I have the Maine guide patch on many wool jackets.
That's excellent. I love it. It seems like that's a coveted piece of swag to go on a classy piece of apparel in my mind. Every time I see one, I'm like, yeah, that is just cool.
Well, you have to earn it. Other people in other states can call themselves a guide, but they haven't had to demonstrate that they know their craft. And in Maine, you do. And if you pass the tests, and you get the classy little patch. So
Yeah, very cool. What is it before, so I know we're going to talk about large Munsterlanders eventually. What is that process like of becoming certified to be a Maine guide?
So I got certified a little over 20 years ago. I had to take 7 written tests, anywhere from trapping to fishing, hunting, recreation. After I took the 7 written tests, I had to go for 3 oral boards. And you can do 2 oral boards at the same time. I took 2 separate oral boards, hunting and recreation. You had to pass a lost person scenario, explain how you would handle yourself in a situation that they came up with. Then you had to pass map and compass, which showed you knew how to use a compass. And after that, they would start hammering you with questions, some on laws, some on techniques. Once I passed those 2 oral boards, I went back to get my fishing license through another oral board, and then I received my Master Maine Guide license.
That's very cool. So there are different guide certifications for hunting and for fishing, and then is there a third before you get up to the umbrella master certification?
Yeah, there's the recreation. To take anybody overnight, you have to have a recreation guide license. That covers like canoeing and things like that. Um, they've changed it a little bit. Now you can be a master guide in one of the disciplines, like hunting, for example, but you will have had to guide for so many hours, and it's quite a few years before you can get that.
When you're guiding prior to being certified, do you have to guide underneath a certified guide or outfitter?
No, you don't. You just have to prove proficiency. And when you take your oral exam, you'll have other guides will be there. Mine, there was a couple game wardens that were there asking the questions. And when I did it, they weren't just asking simple questions. They were trying to get you riled up and trying to get you to make sure you could handle yourself and not get all upset and and belligerent.
Sure. It's very cool that that they do that, and not only give you the academic kind of written tests, but also the situational tests where you actually have to demonstrate a proficiency and stay cool under pressure and all that. I think another thing that people don't realize too about a lot of the main game wardens is a lot of them travel to work by plane. So it's similar to Alaska maybe, or some other where people probably wouldn't be too surprised that an Alaskan game warden would travel to work by plane to get out to some of the remote parts of their patrol area. But in Maine, it's similar as well.
that and snowmobiles, and then dive teams. It's amazing what all skills are part of the warden service. Definitely.
Yeah, really cool. But I think let's get back to bird dogs now. I think we've talked a little bit about guiding and wardens. But can you guys describe how you got into large Munsterlanders?
Well, I'll start. Basically, we had horses and had competed with our Arabian horses, and we'd had German Shepherds over a span of about 10 or 15 years. And when they all passed on, my husband said, I'd really like to get a bird dog. And I said, well, when I was a kid, I grew up with German Shorthairs and with pointers. So we started out looking at those breeds and trying to find a breeder who would maybe have a litter and weren't having much success. And one of the people I talked to said, well, go on the NAVDA website and they'll help you find somebody. So I found the NAVDA website, and while I was noodling around in it, I saw this thing about the versatile breeds and that this whole piece on how many there are and what their characteristics are. And I sort of scrolled through, and the visual of the large Munsterlander and the description of the breed, I said, oh, that's it. That's what we need. So I showed my husband, and he agreed. So then we tried to find a breeder, and we had pretty good luck on that. And one of the things that struck us is that as we were talking to breeders from other breeds before we kind of got into the large Munsterlander track, was just when we talked to the people in the large Munsterlander world, how friendly they were, how supportive, and how kind of all united they were together. They all knew each other because it is a small group. And it just felt very warm and welcoming. So we got our first dog, a little female from Breezy Point's kennel in Wisconsin. And she was just a great ambassador for the breed. She was small. She wouldn't have been breeding eligible ever because she was too small. But she was just a great dog, had a lot of heart, and just an excellent hunter. And we just feel like, wow, this is a great dog. We've had a lot of fun with her. And then about 3 years later, my brother and mother gifted us with our second Munsterlander, and it was a male. And he came from a small kennel, but his lines were Hertz and Seal, which is another major kennel here in the large Munsterlander world. And so that's kind of how we got going. We've had now 5 large Munsterlanders. 2 are with us right now. And in 2017, we got a female from Snowy Oaks Kennel, and Snowy Oaks is the longest running kennel for large Munsterlanders in the United States. They've bred something like 60 plus litters, and they know just the wealth of knowledge they have is incredible. But we got a female from their kennel and started into breeding, and we've had 3 litters in our breeding career. We may go back and do one more, I'm not sure. But it's been quite an experience. And we've enjoyed also just supporting other people, other new kennels when they get going. We talk back and forth with kennels. There's a fellow in New Jersey has a kennel, and he and I always compare notes on potential buyers and how things are going and that sort of thing. When I couldn't place a pup, or somebody's looking for a pup and I don't have one, I'll contact him. So, you have those kind of cooperative arrangements. So anyway, that's how we got into it. And I've gotten dragged into it more and more, again, to become the secretary of the group and then also the newsletter editor. So I haven't backed out of it yet. Go ahead.
So for me, I was at work and I knew I wanted the duck hunting in Maine isn't that great. I knew I wanted to transition to hunting grouse, and I was talking to a guy about it. I was a few years away from doing that because I still had a dog or two. But he suggested the large Munsterlander. So I got on all the sites I could and I just started watching. But what I noticed was you really had to kind of be on a list a couple years ahead. That you just couldn't get one. But I was following these sites and I had a lab. I had just lost my lab at the time. And I remember sitting there seeing Copper Fox Kennels had a breed coming up, or he was going to breed. So out of the blue, I shot him a message and I said, hey, is there any way I can get on your list? And to my surprise, he said, yeah, I'll take a deposit and you got to fill out a questionnaire. So now, well, how much is a deposit? And I think it was around $800 to $1,000 I had to send them, and I'm trying to figure out how to send money over the internet. And so I asked my wife, like, hey, how do I send money over the internet? And she said, well, how much money are you talking? I said, $1,000. She says, what did you buy? I said, I just got a dog. I want to buy a dog. And she says, what kind of dog? I said, a large Munsterlander. She said, a what? I said, a large Munsterlander. She said, have you ever seen one? I said, no. Do you know anybody who's got one? No. But I've been researching them, and trust me, that's what I want. So anyways, long story short, I get Goose, Copper Fox Ajax is his registered name, from Neenah, Wisconsin. And a few years after that, 2 years after that, I was on a hunting trip with Stephanie's husband, Greg, and one of their puppy buyers fell through. And on the way home, Greg said, "You want to buy another dog?" And I said, "Oh, no, no, I'm not ready for another dog yet." And he said, "Okay." So I get home, and Stephanie had been talking to my wife, Kat. I get home, and Kat said, "Hey, can you hop in the shower? We got to go to Greg and Stephanie's house. I want to check out the puppies." So I say, "Kat, we're not going to get another dog right now." And she said, I know. We're just going to go look." So when she's going out to the car, I go into the desk and grab my checkbook because I knew I wasn't leaving without putting a deposit on the dog. That's exactly what happened. We got Boss. Uh, so his name's Square One Boss, from Greg and Stephanie, and it's been a great thing. I love having two dogs.
We're the same way though. We had not clapped eyes on a large Munsterlander until Hannah landed at Logan Airport in Boston. And like I said, she was a small dog. She only topped out at 38 pounds as an adult. So when we got her out of the carrier, she just looked like this little small black and white dog. And Greg said, "Are they supposed to look like that?" And I said, "I don't know." I said, "For all I know, she looks like a long-haired Chihuahua," because she was like very tiny at the time. But nothing fazed her. We were in the cargo bay, the cargo area of road, and planes were landing on the runway right beside her. Big trucks were running around, and none of it fazed her. And wasn't terrified of anything. Just took it all in stride. And and then she basically controlled us within about 15 minutes of owning her. But again, we had not seen what one looked like until then. So it's kind of a common occurrence, really.
That's funny that you say, at 38 pounds, she would be the same size as my female small Munsterlander after a few days of hard hunting. If she's taken a little bit of weight off after, being on a road trip for a week or so, she goes around 41 pounds typically. And she's been as light as 38 pounds, like I said, at the peak of hunting season. So hearing a large Munsterlander that's the same size is kind of funny. But a lot of people don't realize that they're actually two different dogs.
Oh yeah, we get asked that all the time. We've actually at our NAVDA chapter, I've had people come running over and say, "There's somebody over there that's got one like yours," which means it's a Munsterlander. It doesn't mean it's a large necessarily. So I'll go over and meet the people, and a lot of times people mistake them. It's taken a long time here in our NAVDA chapter for people to really understand that there are two breeds, what they look like, what the characteristics are. And when we first showed up with Hannah at our first NAVDA clinic, we had somebody come running over and they said to us in this big stage whisper, "We don't train border collies." And I said, "Well, it's not a border collie, it's a large Munsterlander." And that didn't help. They didn't know what a large Munsterlander was. And I said, "Yes, it's one of the versatile breeds." Well, whatever, and so they kind of gave us, some grudging acknowledgement. And it's taken a long time for the members to understand what the two breeds are. And I think that's kind of indicative all throughout NAVDA. It's for the organization to really understand it and have enough experience with the large Munsterlanders. It's definitely taken a while.
And yeah, there's still not many around, but it's nice to show up and have a dog that's kind of unique. A lot of people haven't seen them, and then not sacrifice any hunting ability because of that uniqueness.
Yeah, they're not deficient in anything just because they're relatively rare. I think some people would think if you don't see very many of them, they don't get bred very much. They must not have much genetic material to work with. They obviously can't be, a real hard charging hunting dog, and they're not like wound up all the time, but the desire to hunt and to cooperate is just in there burning. And the minute you give them an opportunity, there they go. Like our dog, like one dog who's right at my feet right now, she just looks like a teddy bear. She acts like a teddy bear and a queen diva, but when she knows we're going hunting, she gets that kind of hooded look like an eagle and just, I'm ready. And just boom, she's all business. Comes home, what do you mean I didn't get my slice of cheese? So they can go in and out in terms of being extremely driven, extremely focused on hunting, and then back to being, the family pet. So which is one of the things that I think so many people do like about the large Munsterlander.
A lot of times when you go to a more common breed, one of the common questions you ask, the breeder, is this dog from a hunting stock? We don't have to ask that because every single breed is from a hunting stock because they only sell to hunters for the most part.
So they're one of the three oldest German pointing breeds, right? We know that from a couple weeks ago. We were talking about the German Longhairs, which of course are your poorly conformed cousins, or maybe they would call you the poorly conformed cousins. It depends on which side of the argument you're talking to. I think large Munsterlanders, German Longhair Pointers, and small Munsterlanders are the three oldest German pointing breeds. Everything else is subjectively new, right? Or comparatively new, I guess is what I should be saying. And I think that's part of the reason why you don't see those three breeds as often, is because they're not the new thing. They're not the newest, shiniest object in the bird dog world.
Well, and I think it took a while too for them to start to kind of disseminate through the United States. The first ones were brought into more or less, Midwest, the Midwestern area, and the breeders all concentrated there. And so the owners spread out from there. And now we have two breeders in Alaska, and we're here in Maine, and a fellow that has one of our pups from our sea litter just is starting his first kennel here in Maine for large Munsterlanders, and he's also going to the NAVDA Invitational with her. And we have a member in Alabama, and he's a breeder, and he also is going to the Invitational. So you're sort of kind of seeing the dogs spread out geographically, and also being developed more and more, and people starting to see them, out there, competing, if you want to use that word, out there in the hunting testing world.
Now, what are these dogs hunting like? How are they ranging? How are they working with the hunter? If you were to stereotype the breed, what can we expect from a large Munsterlander afield?
I would say they're a closer working dog. My dogs are typically inside of 70 yards, 50 to 70. And that's kind of where I like them because Maine's so thick. By the time they go on point, sometimes once in a great while, they'll be on point 100 yards away. But now you're talking quite a process to get into where they are. I don't have to talk. I'll go, if I'm hunting by myself, I'll go all day and never say a word. They are very in tune to what I'm doing. So whatever way I'm facing, they're hunting in front of me. If they'll come out, they check in regularly. And they just don't require a lot of commands when I'm in the field. They just know what they need to do. They'll do it. I remember taking my sister hunting. She doesn't hunt. She wanted to see what the dogs would do. Comes over to my house. The dogs are, all over, all curious about her. And I took my older dog out, set him on the ground, and she went down to pat him. He just totally ignored the fact that she was there because he had a job to do. And when he checked in with me and just for the whole day, and my younger dog did the same thing. They just didn't care that she was there. They wanted to hunt.
That's one of my favorite things about bird dogs in general. And, you'll have dogs get out of the truck at the tailgate, and, your dogs will get out of your truck, and my dogs get out of my truck, and they're going to touch noses, and then they're off. They might even forget that the other ones are out there. Occasionally they might quarter and bump into each other and probably pass each other, and just they don't pay any attention. And it's just such a cool thing. But then you get back to camp and the dogs are social and playing again and being pet dogs effectively.
Yeah, definitely. And I know our younger dog does range out further than her mother is a closer working dog, but we can bring her back in, but she likes to be the lead dog out there in the field. So Zammy, her mother, doesn't mind being the backing dog and everything else, but she also will oh yeah, there goes Junior. She's down a rabbit hole and ain't going to work. And she lets her figure it out and come back in. So, but yeah, they they can range a little bit further, but I like I said, ours pretty much like what Paul said. They have a somewhat closer range, and for our territory, it is helpful because they go into the woods and within 2 minutes you can't even begin to figure out where the heck they are. So you need to have that where they can rely on you and you can rely on them, definitely.
It's funny too. So your younger dog is the one that wants to range out
Yes,
farther.
yes, definitely. She's just always naturally done that. I think she's probably the our breeding officer, Rami Shreve, had told me one time. She said, if you want to know how your dogs are going to be, look to the grandparents. And when I look at our dog Charlie, and I look at her grandmother Voodoo, they're very similar in that sort of that, I want to be the one that controls this world. And that, whereas Zammy's like, fine, I'm going to get the birds anyway. So who controls what is not my big deal, but just a different personality.
Now, I'm sure you guys know, and kind of a little bit like the long hair, your breed has a reputation for maybe being a little bit protective sometimes, a little bit. I've heard the word snappy. That I think that's probably not the right word to use because I think that means different things to different people. I can relate to this a little bit because I've owned a Chessie before, and I think Chessies have that same reputation. I know, Paul, you mentioned you've owned Chessies before as well. So if somebody says, yeah, large Munsterlanders, just really pretty dogs, and I love the way they hunt, but they're a little bit too snappy for me. How do you respond to that?
I don't find that to be true. They're if somebody comes up my driveway, they'll bark, kind of acknowledge that, hey, there's somebody here. As soon as they come into the house, they were very engaging. They're sniffing them, they're wagging their tails, they want to be patted, very friendly. I think somebody could probably come into my house and steal everything I own and not have to worry about it at all.
I think too that legend really kind of started back when they were first imported. You had very strong German lines, and now most of the dogs are bred here in the United States. And I think that tendency, if it was there, is pretty much tempered at this point. And like Paul said, generally, no, they'll do the usual thing, like, I don't know you, who are you? They're not snappy. They're just a little bit okay. And then you start talking to the guest, and it's like, oh, you're a friend, no big deal. And then they bring you a toy and want you to admire it. So they're cautious where they should be. But you'll have an occasional dog, like you have in any breed, that for whatever reason, experience or whatever, is a little bit more sharp. But I think that a lot of that is a legend that's kind of come forward from the early days when they were first coming into the United States.
Sure, and some of these really old continental breeds they were guardians of property as well as being hunting dogs. So it probably exists, dozens and dozens of generations back. But to your point, here in the US, we're breeding to a different temperament, and I think responsible field, hunting breeders are looking for a biddable cooperative dog. So the word snappy or sharp or anything like that, it's not consistent with the dog that we're looking to be able to train and hunt over, right?
Yeah, it's like I know in our seed letter, we had one female, and they wanted a big female, and because he does a lot of waterfowl hunting down in South Carolina, and they came up to pick up the dog, and they had a 6-year-old son. And that dog, just the minute she saw that little boy, just latched onto him, he latched onto her, and there was no sniffing, no guardedness or anything. They were just off running around having a good time in about 2 minutes. And I think that's really kind of what you see more with them. And I think the other thing too is that I think breeders all around are learning more about what it takes to really build a sociable pup, so that when they leave the breeding kennel, you've got a dog that's pretty well rounded already. He's had quite a few experiences, and has dealt with a lot of different people. And I think that back several years, you probably didn't have that as much. But now I know I work hard. We built them a little jungle gym. We take them in the woods. We take them down creeks. So before they've even gone to their new homes, they've experienced all of the wilds, if you want. They've played around with some birds, the whole 9 yards. So I think that exposure really does make for a more well-rounded dog.
Now, what are you guys hunting besides grouse? What are you hunting with your large Munsterlanders?
Woodcock, occasionally ducks, and then once in a while we'll do some pheasant hunts. That's on a preserve.
Right. My husband and I are good. We lived in Virginia for a number of years, and we always go down each fall to see some good friends. And my husband and his friend go to several preserves in West Virginia that are pretty wild and woolly. And they hunt a mix, and they'll do quail, chukar, and pheasant, and just work on different skill sets for the dogs at the same time. So they have a really, really good time doing the different mixes of birds.
Last year, our grouse population was down due to a very wet spring. So not being a lot of grouse, we targeted woodcock. Did pretty well with that.
Are your woodcock, are they migrating through, or you have mostly native population that far north?
Both. We'll get a native population, but then you'll get waves of them coming through in the fall. So when you get into them, you'll get into a lot of them.
Yeah, they're fun to hunt. I think they're a great bird for puppies, and I've got 2 puppies that I'm picking up here in a couple of days, so I'm looking forward to the woodcock migration this fall for those 2 dogs. But actually, I think I'll have them on rough grouse before that, though. If I do my job right, I will anyway. So Stephanie, you're breeding, right?
Well, yes, we haven't for a couple of years now, but yeah, we are still listed as a breeder, and we may go back to it this coming year.
All right.
Our one female has qualified, and it's just kind of figuring out the right time to do it, because as you know, it's a labor-intensive activity. The 8 weeks that you're dealing with the puppies on the ground, and very nerve-wracking as you're waiting for them to arrive as well. So.
And you guys have a breed council and a breed warden or equivalent within your club?
We have a breeding officer, currently Rami Shreve. She's been the breeding officer here for the LMAA since its inception in 2012, because the different organizations have kind of morphed over time. And she and her husband have the longest running breeding kennel of large Munsterlanders in the United States. So she has a vast amount of experience. She generally handles the breeding side and the evaluation side, and her husband helps with the evaluation, and he's the hunter. So, he picks out the ones that he wants to keep and work with and develop, and he's an avid hunter. So she doesn't see him for months on end in the fall hunting season as he takes the different crews out. But I really enjoy it. It's very satisfying. It has its frustrations too, but to really see a nice group of puppies, and they're all social, they're all very adventuresome, and then the people are so excited to get their pups. It really is a nice, satisfying feeling, definitely.
Can you describe kind of some of the wickets that you have to run through to get your breeding stock certified? And then also, like, are there requirements for you as a kennel to be approved to breed?
Well, we best definitely everyone coordinates through Rami, which is nice to have a central repository of the kind of the knowledge of what's going on within all of the different breeders. For the dogs themselves, there are some genetic tests that we do for known defects. There's also a requirement that they pass the dysplasia, hip and elbow dysplasia tests. And they also have to pass a hunt performance test. And here in the United States, LMAA recognizes the Versatile Hunting Dog Federation and NAVDA as the 2 testing bodies that they accept scores from. And so if your dog prizes, like in the natural ability in NAVDA, and don't quote me on the VHDF because we don't have it out here on the East Coast, but then that's one of the things that they have to do. So the idea is to make sure that you have a very healthy dog, and that you also have a dog that definitely demonstrates that they have all the hunting skills that you will need.
And that's absolutely paramount. Do you know that the breed club is managed and the breed is managed for hunters by hunters?
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely.
You mentioned the VHDF, and I'm really interested. I still need to get out and do some more homework on VHDF, but we've all kind of heard about it, and the scoring system is very interesting to me. Being a 10-point system, I think can just teach us a lot more about our dogs as they test and their real aptitude.
No, I know that the people that do test in VHDF are very devoted to that system. I mean, there's got quite a few similarities between that system and NAVDA, but I think for them that they also like the camaraderie that they claim that they experience within VHDF. As they said on the East Coast, for some reason, that organization just really hasn't gained any traction. So it's mainly Midwest bound, basically. So.
Sure, and I can tell you, even out here, the tests are still few and far between,
Mhm.
and they fill up quickly.
Yes, yeah, they do that. So,
Paul, you talked about before kind of that network of cooperating breeders and how that how they can be supportive of one another. How does that work beyond word of mouth?
Well, for example, I first got a puppy. I hadn't met Stephanie yet. I didn't know there was a breeder in Maine, actually. He was having stomach issues because of the dog food I was on, but I did a search for large Munsterlander breeders just to see the closest ones, and a new one popped up, which was Greg and Stephanie. I called Stephanie. She helped me through it. And then they immediately invited me to train with them on Friday nights and invited me to a Rick Smith clinic they were hosting, and just that kind of thing. And and you come over here and there's other people over here. They're helping out. So it's not like you buy a dog and then, hey, good luck. If you want another one, we'll see you then. These breeders follow that dog and those people right through, and they're always willing to help.
and we have a very active Facebook page.
Yeah.
And so breeders and dog owners are on there all the time, back and forth. You know a lot about them. There's a lot of joshing back and forth and taunting and other things. But it does help with that sense of being bonded together. And we also have a rescue system. So if an owner can no longer take care of a dog, they contact our LMAA rescue coordinator, and she helps work with through the list of people who have indicated that they would be interested in taking on an LM rescue. Generally, it's things like the owner dies, the owner has some financial difficulties or health issues, those kinds of things. And once that word gets out that we're trying to place a dog, people get right active into it and supportive. I know Paul was very active a few months back with working with our rescue coordinator, Laureen, in placing a dog here in Maine when the owner had passed away. And then recently there was another dog out in Colorado and ended up getting placed in Minnesota. But the dogs, to us are very valuable, whether they're going to continue to hunt or no matter how old they are, that you really want them to go to a home that's going to appreciate who they are and what they are. And so we all do work that way. I think it's good though too that we don't have that many that we have to rescue, because if you get one of these dogs, number one, you're thrilled with them, and number two, you're not going to let them go unless it's an absolutely dire situation for you. So.
Sure, that's great to hear that people are actually using the rehoming system or the rescue system that you have within your breed club. We have one in our small Munsterlander club as well. I've not heard of that being used, at least in the last couple of years. And I have talked to several people that have adopted rehomed small Munsterlanders. So I would like to learn how we can make sure that people are, if they can't contact the breeder or the breeder doesn't want the dog back for whatever reason, which I've got opinions on that I'll keep to myself, the person's next step should really be back to the breed club so that that dog is rehomed responsibly and hopefully into a hunting home.
Right. I know that the couple that took the 8-year-old Munsterlander recently, they had no clue what he knew or didn't know. And her husband said, "Well, I'm going to go take him out here and see, working on a couple of birds." And the minute he brought the shotgun out, it was like a different dog. So obviously, whether he's had much training, he definitely has risen to his natural abilities. And so they were delighted to see that. I know actually my husband and I, our younger dog, Charlie, was a rehome. We had a clause in our breeding contract that if for any reason a person couldn't keep a dog, then they needed to contact us and we would help with the rehoming. And when that owner contacted us, we decided to just buy her back because she, had all the bloodlines that we were hoping for. And so we said, well, she'll just be one of our breeding stock. And that's worked out really well. Usually though, there's with the rehome, there's a couple of surprises somewhere along the way, but she's been a great dog. She really, really has. So
That's very cool. And she was meant to be with you guys, I think.
I think so. Yep. I wasn't so sure how her grandmother would take to her, but she came out of the travel kennel, and Voodoo looked at her and said, "Come along, kid, and get in line." And they went into the field. So it worked out really, really well. So
That's cool. So, Paul, you said you've owned 5 large Munsterlanders to date. Is that right?
No, two.
2. Sorry. Okay.
Right now, I've owned a few Chesapeakes, some Labs in the past. Right now, I have 2 male. One's breedable male, and then one I don't have in the breeding program.
Of the 2, which one? So, are they far apart in age?
They're a year apart. You're not going to ask me my favorite, are you?
I was going to ask you the difference between the 2. I don't. Yeah, I would never ask you your favorite. That's just not fair.
Their personalities are quite different. One is my older one will follow me from room to room to room. He doesn't go to bed till I go to bed. If I'm taking a shower, he's outside the shower. My younger one is that way with my wife and I. So whoever goes to bed first, that's where he's going. He's not as I'd say clingy around the house as my older dog. Hunting. Their hunting styles are a little bit different. My older dog tends to be more of a tracking type dog. My younger dog tends to hunt more with his head up, like they call a true dog. But they both find birds, and I don't know that any one of them is better than the other hunting. Training, my younger dog, I can do retrieving drills from sunup to sundown. He doesn't get tired of it. My older dog, I really have to watch his body language so I don't overdo it, so he doesn't lose interest. My older dog gets a little bit more bored with things that involve repetition. My younger dog just will do it. Other than that, they're identical.
Stephanie, of all the dogs that you have, can you go ahead and describe one that kind of stands out the most to you?
That's difficult because they each have been very unique. I know one that stands out to me just because he stood out to other people so much was our male Buddy. And he was one that definitely, we would have people that didn't know the Large Munsterlanders and just hadn't been around, and they'd say, well, he has no drive. And it's like, no, he's got plenty of drive. He just doesn't go banana seeds when he sees a gun or the color orange or anything like that. And one of our friends one day, there was some kind of, over the beer argument about no dog can hunt all day long in the fields in the Midwest. And he let out this Mainer drawl and said, well, he knew one, and said, Buddy. And he said, I've been hunting with him, and he starts at 8 a.m. and he goes until 5 p.m, and he might be tired, but the next morning he's out there again. And that really was Buddy, because he was a tall, rangy dog, and he had this, I called it the Irish thoroughbred lope, and he would just get into that gait and he could go for hours, and he just didn't get excited about all of everything around him. It was just, okay, I'm here to hunt. Here I go. And it was just amazing to watch him because he just was not histrionic, but he was definitely had all the desire you needed and all the skill sets. But he stands out to me for that. And he was definitely a soulmate kind of dog. If he'd come and sit next to you and sit there for hours, just kind of communing with you. And, but each dog has been kind of truly unique and kind of a soulmate in a different way. Each one has been. So, like right now, Zammy is getting a lot of attention from Paul. She's been going back and forth between the two of us, getting hugs and rubs. So she's, I always call her the love duck, but, she's just that's kind of, I think, the most unique thing about her personality. So
Was Buddy always like that, or did he grow into being able to find his pace and just kind of, control himself to have the stamina to go all day like that?
He pretty much was that way all the time. He was like a pup that would sort of sit back and watch everything going on. It wasn't that wasn't interested. He was just sort of taking it all in. And then he'd kind of like, okay, and then he'd execute whatever he wanted to execute, whether it was biting his neighbor or, running after a bird. But he tended to be that way, kind of I wouldn't say philosophical, but just a very different kind of dog in that regard. So I don't think there's anything that we really trained him into. It's just his own style, really.
Cool. I love a calculated kind of dog like that. They can kind of sit back and get the job done, and you don't have to worry about the difference between, 17-mile day and a 27-mile day.
Mhm.
That, the dog is going to be able to handle it, and with the right amount of nutrition and hydration and recovery, he'll be able to hunt again the next day.
Oh, yeah, definitely, definitely.
Can you guys come up with a hunting story about the large Munsterlanders?
So my wife decided that I should be using, Bruce is a year old, I should be using goggles on him. So we trained him to use the goggles, but they look kind of goofy. So I was out hunting, I shot a grouse, I released him to go get it, and he ran in, and all of a sudden he got set right back on his butt, yanked, got the bird, and when he got up to me, his eye was swollen shut. I remember thinking my wife is going to shoot me because I have these goggles and I didn't put them on the dog, and he just got something in his eye. He ended up being fine, but actually the other one was what made me. For a while, I thought my younger dog just didn't. He just didn't strike me as hunting like the other dogs because his head was always up. And a friend of mine had used to raise quail or was raising quail last fall, and he had 100 he wanted to let go, and he gave me a call. He said, "Hey, I'm inviting a couple people over. I'm going to release these birds. Do you have any interest?" And it's right in a wooded area, so it's like, "Geez, yeah, let me know what I owe you." And he says, "Absolutely not." He says, "You've always supported me. Just show up." And I showed up. Well, he's released 50 of them, and at the end of the day, they started, bunching up. And I can see Boss running through the woods, head nice and high, and all of a sudden he just locks right out. And I could see him because he had cleaned out the woods a little bit, and that's when it dawned on me. He just hunts with his head up. And it was interesting to be able to watch that. Usually, and you can't see it, they're on point, and I don't get it noticed till they're on point till I hear their bell stop and I get my Garmin message saying they're on point.
I know when you talk about the North Maine woods and how remote it can be, but it's always amazing to me how many people you run into up there that you know. And then the other thing is how many times we have run into people who we had one incident. We came out of kind of out of off one tote road and kind of getting ready to get onto another one, and this guy comes up in a truck, slams on the brakes, dust going everywhere, and leaps out of his truck. And his first words, "Is that a large Munsterlander?" It's like the last thing you would expected anybody to say. But we have run up several times up there in the North Maine woods, and that's the first question they say. "I've always wanted to see one. I'm just amazed," and they want to know everything about it, the dog. And so that's kind of an unusual story, I guess, in terms of you don't think that very many people know about the breed, and then they surprise you every now and then with somebody way out in the willy wax that knows something about the breed, definitely. So
Did you start carrying kennel cards with you when you go hunting now?
my husband usually has them in an appropriate place. I usually have them in my purse, which is locked in the truck. But usually, we can give them our phone number and all of that. And a lot of times it's not necessarily they want a dog. They've just always wanted to see, they wanted to know and answer questions, that kind of thing. And so we're happy to talk to them about the dogs. We had one guy like that, and turned out he had gosh, what breed did he have? And he was a breeder. And he gave us all sorts of really excellent tips for when the pups arrive, and safety things to think about, which we would have never thought about. Like, he told us to always take the collar off the female, when she goes into labor, because the little pups always like to come up and sit on mom's neck and up where she's breathing. And that he had one who got its head stuck underneath the collar. And this particular female, was not exactly really keen on him reaching into the whelping box to try to get this puppy unstuck. And he was so afraid that it was going to get suffocated. He managed, after 30 or 40 minutes of slowly working with the dog, to get the collar off and the puppy loose. But that was one thing that really struck with us. So the minute any of our dogs go into labor, off comes their dog collar immediately, and it doesn't go back on for 2 or 3 weeks. So, again, you never know where you're going to get your next bit of information. But that was an interesting evening with him. So.
That's very cool. And I've always heard, take the collar off the female, but I've never actually heard of somebody with first person experience of the puppies getting caught under there. So that's interesting to hear.
Yeah, and his caution was that dog was the most loving dog in the world to him. But when she whelped her first litter of pups and even subsequent litters, she didn't want him sticking his hand in that whelping box for at least the first week. And so he warned us that, this sweet little dog that you have could become a holy terror. But our experience has been, they seem to appreciate your support and your help. And for each of our dogs, they've had big litters. And so I guess that's also where they decided, I can't do this on my own. Are you catching this one over here? Help me clean it up, kind of thing. And they've been very cooperative and very appreciative of the support we've given them. And we don't let a lot of people in around the pups for a while, but in terms of them working with us, the mother dogs have always been really, really good to work with.
Very cool. Is there anything else you guys would like to add about the breed or about hunting with one or anything like that?
I guess the thing would be, if someone's interested in the Large Munsterlanders, we have a website with information on the breeders and also when they're expecting litters. And like I mentioned before, we have a very active Facebook page. So a lot of people who are first getting into it maybe get their names on a couple of upcoming puppy lists, get on the Facebook site and just kind of learn about everybody and meet everybody via Facebook. And I think that's been a good introduction to getting started with the breed. The breeders are for the most part, are very eager to talk to you about the dogs and give you all the information that you need and all the support that you need. So starting off on the website and then working your way through the list of breeders is a good way to go.
And then if you feel like we were, which, we had never seen one, touched one or been near one. A lot of times if you reach out to a breeder, no matter where you are in the country, I've had breeders call me and say, hey, I've got somebody that lives an hour away from you. Is there any way they can come over and see your dogs? So they'll stop by. I've got a little farm. I've got pigeons and chucker, and I'll set up a little training thing so they can see what they can do. And most people will do that.
Yeah. And then also LMAA participates in the Pheasant Fest each year. We have a booth. Paul and my husband and another friend who has an LM, Jamie Bell, went to South Dakota last year for the first time. And so we have a booth. We have LMs there. People can get to touch them, pet them, ask a million questions. The number one question is, what's the difference between the small and the large Munsterlander? But after we get to do that, we're okay. So, that's it. But it really is another helpful way for people to see the breed.
And I think the important thing when I talk to people is they need to be serious about hunting and hunting dogs, because it's a way of life. I mean, once you get one of these dogs, it's a lot of work. And some days you get home from work and you're late and you don't want to take the dogs out training, but they need it and you need it. So it's just, once you commit, then you got to fully commit. So you got to be all in.
No, sure thing. And hunting dogs absolutely deserve to hunt. And I think, this may be an unpopular opinion with some, but I think if you're not a hunter and you want a dog, there's a good breed out there for you. But a dog that is primarily bred and built to hunt should be hunted.
Yeah, and we as an organization take a lot of grief for that at times, because we won't sell these great dogs to somebody that doesn't hunt. But I'll stand by that decision any day. They're hunting dogs. They need to be in hunting homes.
And we generally only have 50 to 100 puppies born each year among the litters. And so that's a very small group to work with. And so you definitely want to be very thoughtful about who you place them with, and hopefully that they will develop the dog up. Even if they don't want to breed, we encourage them to go for the hunt performance tests and to participate in that. I think for one thing, it gives you sort of a guideline and a goal for developing your puppy up, and also introduces you to a lot more people who can give you a lot more support. And luckily, sometimes they'll even ask you to go hunting with them after they've known you for 3 or 4 years. But it really, really does keep you focused on the training and keep you kind of methodical about it. You can do it yourself, but most people kind of fall off the wagon in terms of the amount of time they put in. If the dog retrieves well, they're going to keep doing retrieving drills, and what you need to be doing is all the other things that the dog doesn't know as much how to do. So we definitely encourage them for that. And for the breeders, it helps to have the scores because you can sort of see trends over time. And I also tell people when they're asking me, what should I be looking for in getting an LM? I said, one of the things I do is look at the pedigrees, and I'm looking for, not that I'm a fanatic about great test results, but if you see a dog who has what they call a progeny performance award, meaning that 4 of their pups, prized in a hunt test environment, and you see that coming through the pedigree over and over again, you know that performance level, that good level of hunting ability is being passed forward. So that's what I look at, when my females that we've used for breeding and the males that we breed to, generally about 50% of any given breeding, they've won a progeny performance award. Sometimes the dogs have won more than one. So that's one of the things that is helpful to the breeders and also helpful to the people that are looking to buy a good hunting dog.
Having breeding stock that produces well is a sign of a good breeding program.
Definitely, I think so too. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to be on the show with me. And I know, Paul, you're probably wanting to get on the road. I know you've got a little bit of a drive back home. Can you guys go ahead and close it out for us? And if people have questions about the breed or how to find one or how to train one or anything, how can they contact you?
If you want to contact me, I have a Facebook page, Munsterlander Farm Gun Dogs. You can contact me on there. It's a good page to look at, see my dogs in action. And just give me a call. I can show you the dogs. I'd be more than willing to take somebody hunting so they can see how they hunt. But anytime I can sit down and talk bird dogs, it's a good night.
And we're at Square One Kennel, and we also have a Facebook page. We're very active on the LMAA Facebook page, so you might trip over us there as well. And and again, you can just pose questions on the LMAA Facebook page, and no one is ever shy about responding. So you put out a question, and you'll probably have 38 comments in no time at all. But again, they'll help you. People say, well, where can I find a puppy? And they'll direct you to the website, but they may also direct you to a kennel that's expecting a litter, imminently, that type of thing. So.
All right, guys, it's been great talking to you. I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me.
Well, thank you very much, Bill. Well, I'm sure we'll be talking off and on over time. So thank you very much.
Excellent.
Keep up the good work.
I hope you enjoyed episode 26 of the WOPost podcast. If you did, be sure to leave a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice and share the podcast with all of your friends. Remember to join our Patreon community at patreon.com/thewOPost. And if you'd like to advertise on the WOPost podcast, or you'd like to contact me for any reason, you can email me at bill@thewopost.com. Stay steady and God bless.